Jews in the Roman world today. Let's get started. So understanding the Jewish population in the Roman world involves kind of breaking it down into different groups. You have to keep in mind, while we're talking about everything today, that the Jewish population has been oppressed for a period of time up to this point, and the Romans are just another oppressor in a long historical string of oppressors. And the question is, how would you go and deal with this? Would you go along with it? Would you go and fight it? So let me talk about a couple of these different groups. You may be familiar with some of them. One group are called the Sadducees. These are the people who saw the Roman occupation as a way to actually go and cooperate with someone rather than go and fight back, which some of the other groups will. The second group are the Pharisees. These are the people that you may be familiar with the most from the Bible. These are the ones that were afraid of the Roman identity coming in and overtaking the Jewish influences. These are the people associated with very strict interpretation of the Jewish law. And Jesus rallies against them a lot during his ministry. The third group are kind of the weirdos. They're called the Essenes. And the Essenes are monks who went and withdrew to the desert and thought that they essentially thought the world was coming to an end, and that removing themselves from the world was the best thing they can do to avoid Roman influence. They're also most famous for the Dead Sea Scrolls, which you may have heard of. These are essentially very old books of the Old Testament. They're Jewish, right? So they wouldn't have New Testament. But these are ensuring the accuracy of the Old Testament scriptures. And the last one were the Zealots. And the Zealots were the ones that actually said that Rome needs to get out by force, by military force. So a lot of the expectations of the Jewish Messiah, at least initially, was along the lines of the Zealot, the new David, the one that would go and conquer. So here's a picture of the Dead Sea Scrolls, pretty famous scripture, and I'll talk about on the next slide a bit of the backstory to it. So these scrolls were found at a place called Qumran, and here's a picture of where they were found. The story goes something along the lines of a shepherd goes and loses some of his flock, and he goes out to find his flock and throws a rock up into a little crack or a cave, and hears a kind of a cracking noise, and that's the sound of the stone hitting the jar, and inside were the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, this person didn't actually know what they were and sold them for not that much money, but a famous story because it ensured the accuracy of our Old Testament. Now, the first Jewish rebellion here is going to be after the time of Jesus, right? So 66 AD, the Zealots have had enough, and they decide to go revolt against Rome. This is a period that occurs over, or a war that occurs over a period of time, and over 500,000 Jewish people will die in this rebellion against the Roman oppressors. They see it as the time. The person that starts the Jewish war is the Emperor Vespasian. He later goes off to Rome, and the Jewish rebellion is taken on by one of his two sons, Titus. This results in the destruction of the Jewish temple, which is a very significant event in 70 AD. The first temple was built under Solomon, was destroyed by the Babylonians. The second temple, they were allowed to rebuild it under the Persians, and then the Romans destroy it. And until today, the temple's gone now. So there's only been two temples. The Arch of Titus, which I'll show you on the next slide, is from the Roman side. They're very proud of what they did. So it's a Roman triumphal arch that they created. This area down here is called the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall. There you go, it's a little bit down there. And it's a very holy and important place in the Jewish belief. It's basically kind of the remaining part of the temple. The temple was above there, and as we talk about Islam, we'll talk about where that is. But I'll talk about in the future slides what's going on there. And a very famous battle happened at Masada, which is a fortress in the middle of the desert, which ended in mass suicide rather than being captured by the Romans. So here's a painting showing the destruction of the Second Temple, and you can see the menorah being hauled off right there. Here's the Arch of Titus. This is in Rome. So they went back, and Domitian, who is Titus's brother, wasn't a popular ruler, so he finished the Arch of Titus to try to gain a bit more popularity. And here's a shot from the underside. And then here's kind of a close-up of some of the carving on the Arch of Titus, and you can see the menorah being hauled off there. What did it look like? The second temple is sometimes referred to as Herod's temple, but that's kind of what it looked like at its height. Like I said, during the first Jewish rebellion, it was more or less destroyed and just taken down. Here's a picture of the Western Wall. I have a couple slides here, so I'll just slide through here. Here's an Orthodox Jewish man going and praying at the Western Wall. And the Western Wall is famous for these prayer notes that people leave a prayer behind when they go to the wall. And here is Masada. This is the fortress in the middle of the desert, the last stronghold during the first Jewish rebellion, and resulted in about 1,000 soldiers going and committing mass suicide rather than being captured by the Romans. The Romans went and built a siege ramp. I'll show you that on a couple slides. So I'll click through, show you some of the pictures. This is the siege ramp that the Romans built. It took them about 3 months to build that, and that's what they used eventually to go and conquer the city. So, you would think after that, the Jewish population would be over trying to go and oppress the Romans, or overthrow the Roman oppressors, but for a period of time that may be the case, but there's going to be a second rebellion. In 132, Simon Bar Kokhba is seen as one of the, he has the nickname Son of the Star. He's the rebellion leader. He's seen as the Messiah by some of the Jewish population, and they decide enough. The impetus for this is that the Emperor Hadrian, who famously builds Hadrian's Wall, outlaws circumcision, which is obviously really important to the Jewish tradition, and then he's going to, on top of the spot of the temple, build a Roman pagan temple, which is a big no-no. So, Simon Bar Kokhba goes and starts this rebellion, and it's really annoying to the Romans. It occurs for several years, and a lot of casualties on both sides. Over 500,000 again on the Jewish side, but a bunch on the Roman side. Bar Kokhba is captured and killed, and the Jewish people are very, very much punished. They go and end up building this temple at the top, and the name of Israel is actually wiped off the map of the Roman map. So, Jewish rebellion ends in the Jewish population being scattered and completely annihilated to a large extent, to be honest. But the treatment of the Romans to the Christians and Jews are similar in some ways, but maybe the responses are a bit different.